Hey guys, tonight we're sliding into a world with more drama, betrayal, and generational pettiness than every season of Succession combined. The dark side of Renaissance Italian families. Yes, it's time for velvet capes, daggers under the dinner table, and the kind of power struggles that make your in-laws look like a support group. If you thought your family had issues, just wait till you meet the Medicis, the Borgias, and a Florentine uncle who's been plotting your downfall since before you could walk. Before we spiral into a vortex of Machiavellian chaos, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this kind of thing. Drop a comment letting me know which city you'd want to rule or ruin, and what time it is where you are. Now, go ahead and dim those lights, switch on a fan for that soothing white noise, and get comfortable. Maybe grab a pillow to clutch, just in case someone tries to poison your snack. Let's take a moment. Have you ever wondered what it was really like to be part of a Renaissance dynasty? Did people actually wear those absurd, puffy shorts? Or is that just a cruel joke played by art historians? Could you go 5 minutes at a family wedding without a duel breaking out? Was family business code for hiding the bodies again? Did people genuinely die from eating bad cheese? Or was it always suspicious? How did anyone get any sleep when everyone in the house was either planning a coup or having a crisis of existential Catholic guilt? Would you survive Sunday dinner with the Medicis? Or would you accidentally end up exiled to a swamp outside Pisa? Congratulations, you've just woken up in Florence, 1494. You have no phone, you're wearing tights, and your cousin just asked you if you trust the wine. Good luck, it's dawn. The cathedral bells are shaking the windows, and you wake up clutching a silk pillow stuffed with anxiety. Your bedroom? Frescoed ceilings, suspicious drafts, and a decorative dagger left accidentally near your bedside. Family portraits glare at you from every wall. Breakfast is less coffee and a croissant and more who poisoned the figs. Welcome to your Renaissance morning routine. The first thing you notice is the cold, the kind of chill that seeps through tapestries and right into your bone marrow, despite your noble status and 12 layers of nightshirts. No central heating, just a giant echoing room where the only thing thicker than the air is the tension. Outside, a chorus of pigeons and distant horse hooves, but inside, it's just you and the muffled sound of servants whispering through the keyhole. Are they bringing breakfast or just checking if you made it through the night? Jury's out. As the sun edges through the stained glass windows, because nothing says family values like light filtered through scenes of beheadings and saints, you try to gather your courage and your slippers. Your feet hit the cold marble floor. Immediately, you regret not bribing the chambermaid to put your shoes by the fire. Lesson learned. The palazzo is a labyrinth of long corridors and strange drafts, each one carrying the vague scent of incense, wax, and whatever scandal your cousin started last night. You shuffle to your wash basin, where a pitcher of icy water waits to shock you into consciousness. You splash your face, trying to ignore the family crest leering at you from the bottom of the bowl. Soap? Not likely. Cleanliness is reserved for holy days, and after particularly regrettable feasts, you stare at yourself in the polished silver mirror, wondering if today's the day you'll finally figure out what's going on, or if you'll just get blamed for something you didn't do again. Renaissance self-care. Mostly paranoia. Soon, the household springs to life with the enthusiasm of people who know every day is a new opportunity to be written out of the will. Servants bustle in, pretending not to eavesdrop. One arranges your clothes on a chair, 3 shirts, 2 velvet doublets, and a pair of hose so tight they could double as a family curse. You wonder if the tailor is secretly working for your rivals, judging by the fit. Every item is layered with the heavy scent of lavender and a touch of mothball, designed to repel insects, relatives, and, if possible, assassins. As you dress, you hear voices drifting up from the inner courtyard. Someone arguing over the price of olive oil, someone else threatening the gardener about the topiary. Normal family stuff. You make a mental note to avoid the kitchen until the cook's mood improves. Down the grand staircase you go, past marble busts of ancestors who all look like they died suspiciously. Breakfast is waiting in the hall, displayed on a table that could comfortably seat a minor army, silver platters of bread, cheese, fresh fruit, and a jug of wine. Because Renaissance hydration is mostly just denial, every dish comes with a side of suspicion. You reach for the figs, only to pause and casually watch which servant is sweating the most. You eat what you must, never the soft cheese. You heard a story once, and in this family, that's enough. Across from you, your older brother is pretending to be engrossed in a letter. It's upside down. Your aunt is adjusting her veil, watching everyone with the eyes of a seasoned chess player. Someone brings up politics. Someone else mentions a wedding, which is code for pending disaster. You smile and nod, calculating how many relatives you can trust before noon. The answer is always one fewer than yesterday, and as the bells keep ringing, you realize the day has barely started. Welcome to morning in the Palazzo, a masterclass in anxiety management, light treason, and the art of eating breakfast with your back to the wall. Before you can face the family, you have to squeeze into layers of brocade, lace, and something called a codpiece. Clothes here aren't about comfort, they're about intimidation and mild circulation loss. You are 30% velvet, 40% sweat, and 30% existential dread. If you thought skinny jeans were bad, try doublet lacing in a hurry because your aunt is banging on the door. You peel yourself from the chilly embrace of your canopied bed and approach the outfit your valet has laid out, less ready to wear and more ready to fight for your life. Every piece is stitched with judgment. The hose alone takes a full 5 minutes and most of your patience. Imagine trying to wrangle a pair of woolen boa constrictors up your legs while your little cousin cackles in the hallway. They say Renaissance Italians invented banking, but honestly, the real innovation was finding new ways to make socks feel like medieval punishment. Next comes the linen shirt, which, at this point, is both your base layer and your only reliable shield against chafing. You slide it on and discover yet another mysterious stain, possibly olive oil, possibly political intrigue. You contemplate changing, but the sound of footsteps in the corridor tells you it's already too late. Fashionably late is not a thing here. If you're not downstairs in 5 minutes, your mother starts sending servants in to help. Their version of help is a 3-person assault on your dignity, and probably another lecture on posture. Now for the doublet. The doublet is what happens when a waistcoat and a straitjacket have a baby. It's laced so tightly across your torso that you involuntarily learn how to breathe only with your shoulders. Forget one size fits all. This one size fits nobody, especially not you. After last night's extra helping of roasted capon, you tug the laces, mutter a small prayer, and brace yourself as your valet yanks the ties another inch. Renaissance tailoring tip. If you can feel your own heartbeat in your ears, you're halfway there. And then, the pièce de résistance. The codpiece. No one asked for it, but here it is, ostentatious, bizarre, and about as comfortable as a doorstop in your trousers. Legend says it's for protection, but everyone knows it's really just for sending unsubtle messages at formal dinners. You strap it on and wonder how anyone is supposed to walk, let alone dance, without alarming the clergy. Try not to make eye contact with yourself in the mirror. Just keep moving. A belt, dagger, and at least 3 ornamental chains complete the look. Renaissance accessories serve 2 purposes: broadcasting your family's status and making sure you can't sneak up on anyone, ever. The more you jingle, the more you're winning at life. Add in some lace cuffs, starched to the rigidity of emergency construction material, and a ruff collar big enough to require its own tax bracket. If you've ever wanted to feel like you're being gently strangled by a frilly dinner plate, this is your moment. Finally, the finishing touches. Hair pomaded within an inch of its existence, shoes with toes so pointy you could joust with them, and a feathered cap that could double as a bird sanctuary. You dab on a little rose water because it's only a matter of time before the room starts to smell like fear and boiled wool. Perfume is not a luxury, it's self-defense. Throughout the entire ordeal, you're aware of the ticking clock and the rising volume of impatient relatives in the hallway. Someone tries the doorknob, You panic and attempt to tie your sash and buckle your shoes at the same time, which is a recipe for disaster and pulled muscles. By the time you finally stagger into the corridor, sweaty, breathless, and wrapped in enough fabric to outfit a minor duchy, you realize you forgot your signet ring. Back inside. Start again. You emerge, finally, in full Renaissance regalia, ready to be judged for your fashion choices by every single member of your household. Welcome to Italian style, uncomfortable, impractical, and entirely necessary if you want anyone to take you seriously before breakfast. And remember, nothing says family unity like an entire household silently suffering together, strangled by ruffs, velvet, and the heavy weight of social expectation. Breakfast is a tense affair. You're sitting at a table that could double as a runway for peacocks, surrounded by relatives eyeing you like rival CEOs at a shareholder meeting. Uncle Ludovico is pretending to read Machiavelli upside down. Someone's arguing about inheritance, and everyone is pretending the bread isn't stale. The morning sun filters through stained glass, painting everything with suspiciously dramatic light. It's less cozy family meal, more Last Supper, but with higher stakes. You clutch your goblet of watered wine as the silverware clinks and the air thickens with polite hostility. Every seat at the table is assigned, naturally, so if you're at the far end, congratulations. You're either the youngest, the least trusted, or both. Your mother presides at the head, holding her spoon like a scepter. She asks after your health in a tone that implies she knows more than your physician, and maybe more than your confessor. Your older brother, ever the golden child, launches into a monologue about Florentine politics, dropping family names and subtle threats like breadcrumbs. The twins across from you start squabbling about who gets the corner of the family estate with the best lemon trees. You try to look busy buttering your bread, but everyone knows it's more weevil than wheat. The servants glide silently around the room, refilling plates and removing evidence. Their faces are blank, but you know they're listening to every word, ready to report anything interesting to the highest bidder by lunchtime. There's an etiquette to breakfast. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't mention last night's incident. And under no circumstances should you criticize the figs, even if they taste faintly of betrayal. Halfway through the meal, Aunt Isabetta, dressed entirely in black velvet, asks if anyone has seen her jewelry box. Silence descends. You chew your cheese very slowly. This is the opening move in today's family chess game, and nobody wants to be the first pawn sacrificed. Your cousin Bianca seizes the moment to share her latest romantic drama, complete with unnecessary details and a suspicious cough that might be the plague or might be strategy. Either way, you scoot your chair a little further away. The food is meant to impress: piles of fruit, hunks of goat cheese, crusty loaves that could survive a siege, but every mouthful is a gamble. You watch as your uncle tests his porridge for poison with the tip of a silver spoon, a time-honored tradition and a necessary precaution since the Borgia incident of '91. Conversation stutters, then resumes with forced joviality. Someone makes a joke about excommunication, someone else laughs a little too loudly. Inheritance comes up, as it always does. Today it's over olive groves. Tomorrow, maybe sheep. Everyone has an opinion, but nobody says what they actually mean. Your aunt, who's been ill since Christmas, wonders aloud who will look after the villa if anything happens to her. Your father, eyes narrowed, changes the subject to art patronage, which is family code for whose portrait gets painted next and who's paying for it. By now, everyone's playing their own secret game, calculating alliances with every polite smile. You try to eat quietly and avoid eye contact, which is nearly impossible in a room lined with ancestral portraits that seem to be judging your table manners. Over by the window, the youngest cousin is feeding bits of fruit to the family falcon. It's a clear power move, or just an act of rebellion against breakfast etiquette. Either way, nobody stops her. Not with that bird. The meal finally winds down as the kitchen maid clears the last of the burnt toast and refills everyone's goblet. Your mother ends breakfast with a prayer, asking for peace and prosperity, while giving a meaningful look to your sister, who accidentally spilled wine on a marriage contract. As you rise from the table, everyone is smiling, but you know they're already planning their next move. Welcome to family breakfast. Less nourishment, more negotiation. You leave the hall feeling both overfed and underprepared, already bracing for whatever fresh drama lunch will bring. In a Renaissance family, breakfast is never just a meal, it's an opening gambit. Good luck surviving until supper. The kitchen maid knows everything. The butler has seen things you wouldn't believe. Servants are everywhere, pouring wine, sweeping floors, listening for gossip. If you're plotting something, and let's face it, you are, assume at least 3 people are eavesdropping behind the tapestries. Even the family dog looks like it's reporting to someone. You shuffle through the echoing corridors, trying to look casual. But there's always a pair of eyes, or 6, following your every move. There's Giovanna, the scullery maid, expertly scrubbing a copper pot with one ear cocked toward your whispered conversation. She knows more family secrets than the notary, and unlike your cousin, she can keep them straight. The butler, Signor Bartolomeo, is a shadow gliding along the marble floors, arms folded, face impassive. He's seen every scandal and betrayal this house can muster and, rumor has it, still keeps the guest lists for 3 generations' worth of exiles. Every room in the palazzo is their territory. The servants dust around your private documents, water the plants in alcoves where you're convinced someone hid the last will and testament, and refill the inkpots you use for secret correspondence. You once tried to hide a coded note in a jar of olives. By dinner, the note was gone, the olives were replaced, and the only person who seemed amused was the footman with the suspiciously smug smile. Need information? Forget interrogating relatives, just befriend the staff. The laundress knows who came home late, whose doublet was stained with something unidentifiable, and who slipped out before dawn with a bag for charity. The cook, a force of nature who can chop onions and silence a room simultaneously, has strong opinions about everyone. Want to know who's in favor this week? Check who gets an extra helping of honey cake. The line between service and surveillance is thin. The servants see everything. Love letters tucked into napkin folds, tears spilled in dark stairwells, even the exact amount of wine everyone drinks at breakfast. Your family likes to believe they run the household, but it's really the staff who pull the strings, quietly, politely, and always with plausible deniability. You suspect there's an unofficial staff gossip network. Every small disaster, a broken vase, a missing ring, a mysterious illness, is dissected and debated over buckets in the cellar or on the back stairs. By the time you hear about an incident, the staff already have 3 theories, 2 scapegoats, and a plan to cover up the evidence. Need to get a message to another city? Don't bother with official channels. The stable boys run their own express service, provided you pay in coin, stories, or leftover tarts. Trust is a rare commodity. Servants are loyal to their own survival. Many have families in the city, or at least a second job in another noble's house. Spies and double agents abound, especially when the family is feuding. So, always. If you catch the gardener chatting with the maid from across the piazza, odds are he's exchanging more than just tips on tomatoes. And then there's the matter of bribery. A few extra coins can get you advance warning of a surprise inspection, or the inside scoop on which cousin is sneaking out after curfew. But bribes go both ways, and information flows upward, sideways, and occasionally to the tax collector if someone's feeling especially vindictive. You wonder sometimes if the palazzo's floors creak on purpose, as part of a centuries-old staff conspiracy to keep the family just jumpy enough to stay honest. At the end of the day, the staff retreat to their own quarters, communal, cramped, but buzzing with stories. They laugh, roll their eyes, and pass judgment on their employer's latest follies. Tomorrow, they'll sweep the same floors and pour the same wine, all while quietly shaping the fate of the house. In the Renaissance, power comes with a title, but knowledge comes with an apron, and everyone knows who's really in charge. So next time you sneak a midnight snack, remember, you're never truly alone. Somewhere, a maid is dusting, a butler is listening, and a small dog is probably taking notes. Communication is a minefield. You can't just text your cousin to meet you by the fountain. You have to send a note with enough coded language to stump a Vatican cryptographer. If intercepted, it could mean exile, imprisonment, or, worst of all, your mother's disappointment. Better start practicing your invisible ink recipes, urine optional, but historical. You stare at your inkwell, trying to remember if lemon juice or crushed violets is less likely to betray your secrets under candlelight. The quill trembles in your hand. Should you address your cousin as the Falcon, or stick with the classic friend of the cheese merchant? Decisions. In the Renaissance, nicknames aren't just for fun, they're your best hope of plausible deniability. The only group chat available is a string of folded parchment triangles, exchanged furtively by servants who know better than to ask questions out loud. Paper isn't cheap, so every letter is precious and every mistake a tiny crisis. You practice your script carefully, aware that sloppy penmanship could expose you as the family member with the least patience or the shakiest nerves. Latin or Italian? Latin sounds smarter and more official, but also way more suspicious if your cousin can't read it. Italian feels almost too honest, like shouting secrets across the piazza. You compromise with a hideous mixture of both, plus a dash of French for style and confusion. Once your message is written, something subtle like the lemons are ripe, which, in your family, means Uncle Carlo's been bribed again. You begin the complex process of folding, sealing, and decorating the letter. A wax seal is essential. It's proof of authenticity, a status symbol, and a handy way to blame someone else if things go wrong. The real trick is finding the right servant to deliver it. Too eager, and you risk a double agent. Too reluctant, and the message never leaves the kitchen. You settle for the stable boy, whose loyalty is questionable, but who owes you after that incident with the goat. Sending a letter means embracing risk. You watch the courier disappear down the hall and immediately regret everything. Is the message too obvious? Will the wrong person intercept it? Are you about to trigger another family scandal? There's a reason some Renaissance letters end with burn after reading. Of course, burning paper indoors is frowned upon. Last time, you set the tablecloth on fire and blamed it on a rival family's curse. Meanwhile, the art of code is always evolving. Today, it's simple substitutions and private symbols. Tomorrow, it's invisible ink or writing between the lines. There's the Greek method, where you write every other word, and the alchemist's cipher, where you hide messages in recipe books. Family recipes for almond cake often double as assassination schedules. If you think you're clever, just remember, so does everyone else in the house. Your grandmother, who claims not to read, once intercepted a letter by smelling the wax and announced, "This smells like treason." The next day, 3 cousins left for extended pilgrimages. Coincidence? Nobody thinks so. The best secrets are often whispered, but the written word is both dangerous and delicious. Letters get stashed in Bibles, sewn into hems, or folded into fans for passing at parties. Some are even eaten. Yes, really, if things get desperate enough. You can never be too careful. A note about the weather could lead to your exile if it's interpreted as code for attack at dawn. Meanwhile, your sister's innocent letter about a dress fitting caused 2 duels and an emergency meeting with the family lawyer. Clarity is the enemy. The best messages are the ones that make everyone just confused enough to look elsewhere for answers. So, you wait for a reply, nerves frayed, stomach churning, desperately trying to act casual, while the fate of the family, or at least the lemon harvest, hangs in the balance. The only thing more stressful than sending a secret letter is receiving one. And as the shadows lengthen in the palazzo, you promise yourself, next time, you're just going to yell out the window, or maybe invent texting. Either way, welcome to Renaissance messaging, where every letter could be your last, and even a shopping list is a potential conspiracy. You think sibling rivalry means fighting over the front seat? In Renaissance Italy, it means hiding your shoes so your brother can't escape an assassination attempt at dinner. Your sister's playful prank is lacing your tea with a mild laxative. Every minor slight is remembered and, if possible, avenged at the next masked ball. In this household, every day is a high-stakes game of emotional chess, except the pieces are holding grudges and sometimes actual weapons. Sure, you once argued with your brother about who got the last slice of cake. Here, it's about who gets the family villa in Umbria, who sits closest to the Pope's nephew at Easter, and who ends up locked in the attic for reflecting on their actions. The scoreboard isn't kept in points, it's kept in cryptic diary entries, secret alliances, and the occasional accidental tumble down the stairs. You can't trust a single apology. The Renaissance sibling is a master of the backhanded compliment. "Oh, your doublet looks so nice, it distracts from your unfortunate nose." If your sister brings you a pastry, you inspect it for hidden nails, or at least a strongly worded note. At family gatherings, you sit 2 seats away from your most recent rival. Not because you're forgiving, because it's the maximum safe distance for flung cutlery. Birth order matters here. The oldest gets the family estate and the most enemies. The youngest gets the priesthood and chronic indigestion. Middle children, like you, get to be the flexible one, which is code for constantly blamed. Hand-me-downs are less about clothing and more about ancestral vendettas. Last week, you inherited a centuries-old curse involving eggplants and sudden gout. Your childhood games were less hide-and-seek and more hide-and-plot. Remember the time you and your siblings played at being rival city-states? The treaty negotiations ended with a garden hose and 3 years of silent treatment. If you're not actively seeking revenge, you're falling behind. Your brother once replaced your ink with squid extract before your big poetry recital. You retaliated by swapping his sword with a breadstick before his fencing lesson. He still hasn't forgiven you, or spoken to carbohydrates since. Family outings are tactical exercises. You'd never walk through a market without at least one sibling trailing you, just in case. Presents are suspicious. Compliments are traps. If your sister volunteers to do your hair, expect either elaborate braids or mild humiliation at court. The only thing more dangerous than being alone with your sibling is being left alone by your sibling. You know what they say, absence makes the plots grow stronger. Even mealtimes are war zones. You pour your own wine, you count the olives on your plate. If your brother asks for the salt, you hand it over, slowly, while making direct eye contact, in case he's hoping you'll slip up and reveal your latest secret. Everyone keeps their hands visible above the table, except for that one cousin who's always adjusting his shoes. You suspect he's hiding a slingshot. And don't get started on family portraits. Sibling rivalry doesn't stop at the painter's easel. Who's standing closer to Papa? Who gets the biggest feather in their hat? Who looks vaguely sinister in the background? You've mastered the art of the subtle glare that only the artist will notice. A historical Easter egg for future generations. But, as exhausting as it is, sibling rivalry is also the family's secret glue. After all, nobody else understands why you hoard oranges or always sleep with one eye open. You may spend most of your days plotting minor humiliations, but you also know that when a rival family comes for you, your sibling will be right there at your side, probably rolling their eyes, but armed and ready. So you keep your wits about you, your shoes hidden, and your teacup within arm's reach. Because in Renaissance Italy, sibling rivalry isn't just for childhood, it's a lifelong sport, and the winner gets the last word at your funeral. Midday arrives and so does another meal, which is really just a performance in trust. The cook brings out platters of roast meats, suspicious cheeses, and fruit. Always fruit. Everyone waits for someone else to take the first bite. A toast? Only if you're feeling lucky. The dining hall is an echo chamber for anxiety. Sunlight glinting off polished silver and enough polished armor to start a minor civil war. Lunch here isn't so much a break as a 3-act play, complete with dramatic pauses and nervous glances at the salt cellar. Your plate is a Renaissance still life. Gleaming grapes, cuts of wild boar, a wedge of something the color of regret, and bread so crusty it could legally be classified as a weapon. You sit at the long table, sandwiched between relatives whose smiles are just a little too wide. Everyone is talking, but nobody is saying anything that matters. Conversation drifts from the weather, oppressive, as always, to rumors about which family is secretly plotting with the French this week. There's a certain etiquette to eating. Never reach for the biggest piece of meat unless you're feeling lucky or recently updated your will. And then there's the cheese. Nobody trusts the cheese. You watch as your aunt prods hers with a fork, half expecting it to get up and run. You once heard a story about a cousin who died after eating unlucky ricotta. Of course, that could just be a warning invented by the family lawyer to keep the inheritance pool manageable. Either way, you push your cheese to the side and focus on the bread, which is stale, but at least predictable. Fruit, however, is inescapable. Oranges, figs, pomegranates, each one a miniature status symbol, imported at ridiculous expense and carried in on a silver tray with the reverence of holy relics. You remember last winter, when the family nearly started a feud over the last persimmon. Lunch here is less about nutrition and more about proving you can afford not to die of scurvy. The most dangerous part of the meal? The toasts. Someone always proposes one, usually for family unity or new beginnings, which is code for, let's see who's brave enough to drink first. The wine is poured, glasses are raised, and everyone watches each other like hawks wearing silk doublets. Your cousin takes a sip, pauses, and then smiles a little too quickly. You follow suit, pretending you can't taste the faint hint of bitterness. Is it just the tannins, or a subtle note of regret? Hard to say. Meanwhile, the cook and her helpers watch from the doorway, faces unreadable. If everyone makes it through lunch, she'll receive a coin. If not, she'll receive a visit from the family physician, who is also the coroner, who is also a distant uncle with very shaky handwriting. You eat slowly, carefully, memorizing which fork you used, just in case you need to account for your last actions later. Throughout the meal, a parade of servants refills jugs, replaces dishes, and removes anything left untouched for more than a minute, just in case. At least one servant is always hovering with a napkin, ready to blot up spilled secrets. The family dog, who is not above eating anything that falls, serves as the unofficial poison tester. You watch his reaction to the cold roast chicken and make your decision accordingly. The meal ends, eventually, with candied fruits and thin slices of almond cake. If you've survived this far, you're probably safe, at least until dinner. Lunch disperses with a round of awkward embraces and veiled threats disguised as compliments. You tuck a wedge of bread into your pocket just in case you need to barter your way out of trouble later, and promise yourself to skip the cheese tomorrow. Because here, lunch isn't just a meal. It's a masterclass in suspicion, family politics, and digestion under duress. Eat up, if you dare. Religion is woven into everything, including your nerves. Family prayers are half-hearted, and mostly spent praying no one confesses your secrets by accident. The confessional is less about salvation and more about updating the family's legal risk assessment. The family chapel sits at the heart of the palazzo, a stone sanctuary with an altar covered in starched linen, flickering candles, and enough incense to smother a small scandal. At dawn and dusk, you shuffle in, head bowed, surrounded by siblings, cousins, and assorted aunts. You're meant to be seeking absolution, but mostly you're scanning the pews, wondering who looks the guiltiest this week. Mass is a minefield. The priest, a distant cousin, called to the cloth after losing at inheritance roulette, drones through the liturgy. The congregation mumbles responses, eyes darting from the gilded icons to the door. You kneel on a velvet cushion, pretending to pray while mentally reviewing your alibis. The family motto may as well be, "Forgive us our trespasses, and please don't mention what happened in the wine cellar." During prayer, everyone is listening for confessions. It's like an open mic night for anxiety. You whisper your sins, careful not to incriminate anyone with the same surname. Meanwhile, your brother is praying for guidance, which could mean anything from divine inspiration to legal loopholes. The line between confession and blackmail is blurry, especially with your sister 2 pews over, shooting you looks that say, "If you tell on me, I tell on you." Confessional booths are the original soundproof offices, but everyone knows they leak secrets like a colander. The priest listens with polite detachment, occasionally coughing to cover his shock or his amusement. You try to remember which cousin last used the booth. It smells faintly of lavender and nerves. When it's your turn, you shuffle in, knees creaking, and offer up your sins. Maybe some white lies, maybe a small bribe, maybe forgetting to feed the family falcon. You keep the real secrets vague, just in case the priest's memory improves after dinner. Outside the booth, family members linger in the aisles, exchanging coded apologies. "May God forgive you," Aunt Isabetta says, which is family code, for I'm still furious about the lemon trees. Your mother offers a rosary and a veiled threat in the same breath. Someone lights a candle for the souls of the departed, which usually means for the departed jewelry I'm still missing. But religion here is also weaponized. Need an alibi? Suddenly you're extra devout, volunteering for vigils and fasting on Fridays, while making sure everyone knows. Got a rival cousin? A well-timed prayer for their spiritual clarity in front of the whole family is the Renaissance version of a subtweet. Even the priest can't resist the occasional sermon that seems a little too specific, like the time he preached about the dangers of envy, pride, and misplacing silverware. The chapel isn't just a place for guilt, it's a boardroom in disguise. Before big family decisions, marriages, lawsuits, who gets to commission the next fresco, you gather here to seek guidance, which is to say, to glare at each other over folded hands and mouth prayers that double as subtle accusations. Afterward, someone inevitably suggests a moment of silent reflection, which you all know is code for quick, agree on a cover story. By the end of the session, you leave the chapel lighter in spirit, heavier in suspicion. You cross yourself and vow to sin less, at least until the next strategy meeting. The bells ring, and everyone files out, smiling just a little too brightly, clutching their secrets like pearls. Because in this family, confession is less about redemption and more about survival. Welcome to the chapel, where every prayer is a negotiation, and forgiveness is best delivered with plausible deniability. The Pope is technically the big boss, but in practice, half your family is plotting to get a nephew into the Vatican. The other half is lobbying for excommunications. Grandma is lighting a candle for your soul while drafting a threatening letter to the local bishop. If you think holiday politics are bad now, imagine when the church is literally judging you. Here, papal politics are an Olympic sport, and everyone in your family is a seasoned contender. On any given Sunday, you'll find 3 uncles scheming in the library over a map of Rome, a cousin who suddenly feels the call right after being caught cheating at cards, and an aunt loudly praying for the downfall of her enemies, naming them just quietly enough to stay out of official trouble. The family's collective hope is that one day your name will echo through the halls of the Vatican, preferably on something grander than a wanted poster. It's not that anyone in the house actually wants to become a cardinal. Most of you don't even want to wake up for morning mass. But influence in Rome is everything. A well-placed relative in the curia means indulgences on speed dial, lucrative positions, and, if you're lucky, papal dispensation to ignore certain embarrassing legal matters involving farm animals and property lines. The only thing stronger than faith here is ambition, preferably achieved while still looking pious. Your grandmother is the mastermind of it all. She prays with one eye open and negotiates church alliances the way other people bargain for fish. Her personal chapel is a war room, every icon blessed, every relic insured, and every visitor greeted with a gentle smile and a sharp question about their confession habits. She has a special set of rosary beads just for intercessory threats. May the Lord watch over you, and may the Archbishop return my calls, or else. Meanwhile, the younger generation is divided. Your older brother is being groomed for greatness, which is family code for endless Latin lessons, fasting, and learning how to say yes, Your Holiness, without rolling his eyes. Your sister, on the other hand, is quietly corresponding with a nun rumored to have influence in Avignon. You try to keep your head down, which is hard when you're constantly being drafted into elaborate plans to host traveling priests, or told to act penitent whenever church officials visit for dinner. The real fun starts when word spreads that a distant cousin is being considered for bishopric. Suddenly, family dinners are filled with discussions about canon law and inheritance. Relatives begin recounting childhood stories about how pious little Giovanni was, completely rewriting history to erase the infamous cheese heist of '82. Old grudges resurface, usually tied to who stole whose spot at First Communion, or who was responsible for that unfortunate incident with the holy water and the family cat. Of course, there's always a scandal brewing. A priest hints that a certain family member may not have lived entirely in accordance with the Gospels. Panic ensues. Apologies are offered. Donations are made. Your aunt volunteers for charity work, mostly to be seen by the right people. Your grandmother sharpens her pen and drafts a letter to Rome, so pointed it requires a blessing before mailing. At the same time, the threat of excommunication hangs over the house like a thundercloud. No one wants to be cut off from the sacraments, least of all during the high-stakes season of Lent, when everyone is extra careful not to tempt fate or the bishop. It's a delicate balance. Maintain favor with the church, protect the family name, and try not to get thrown out of Mass for muttering sarcastic comments during the homily. In the end, you realize papal politics isn't about faith or even power. It's about survival, legacy, and making sure grandma's prayers are just a little louder than everyone else's gossip. So you light a candle, offer up a quick plea for divine protection, and pray your family can make it through Easter without sparking a new inquisition. Because in Renaissance Italy, the only thing more dangerous than church politics is your own relatives playing at sainthood. Settle arguments like a grown-up, with pointy sticks and blood feuds. Someone has insulted the family honor again, so now you're standing in a courtyard at dawn, trying to remember which end of the sword is sharp. If you survive, you get a new scar and maybe a promotion. The family courtyard at sunrise is the Renaissance equivalent of the conference room, only colder, and with more witnesses hiding behind curtains. You clutch your sword with clammy hands, mentally rehearsing the list of grievances that have led to this moment. Was it the joke about someone's hairline? The offhand comment about Aunt Isabetta's embroidery? Or the ongoing dispute about who actually won at last week's dice game? In the end, it doesn't matter. Honor is as fragile as the family glassware, and both get broken before noon. Dueling is less about violence, more about ceremony and anxiety. There are rules, of course, because nothing says organized chaos like a code of conduct for stabbing your cousin. Your second, usually a close friend or a cousin who owes you a favor, stands nearby, offering moral support and unsolicited advice about your stance. Across the way, your rival is stretching in ways that look more like interpretive dance than warm-up. The family dog watches from a safe distance, probably placing bets with the kitchen maid. The sun isn't even up yet, but everyone is already whispering. The butler is discreetly setting up chairs for spectators. Someone in the shadows is taking notes, probably to update the family's running tally of injuries, debts, and who owes who an apology fruit basket. You can practically smell the anticipation, mixed with dew and the faint tang of last night's spilled wine. It all seems very dramatic, but this is just business as usual in a family where team building means trying not to bleed on the frescoes. Dueling is the only way to resolve disputes that can't be settled by glaring, letter writing, or putting extra garlic in someone's stew. Officially, you're defending honor. Unofficially, you're hoping not to embarrass yourself by tripping over your own shoes before the first swing. You square off, saluting with as much dignity as you can muster, hoping nobody notices your hands shaking. The rules are shouted by an uncle who's had too much coffee or too little sleep. First blood wins. Someone calls out, which is reassuring. If you ignore the family tradition of redefining first blood, depending on who's winning, the first few moments are a blur of steel and adrenaline. If you're lucky, you'll get away with a scratch, a tear in your doublet, and a renewed respect for your cousin's swordsmanship. If you're unlucky, you'll be explaining the injury to your mother over lunch and inventing a heroic story that doesn't involve slipping on wet cobblestones. Either way, scars are badges of honor, or at least badges of participation. Dueling has its perks. A victory can settle arguments for months, possibly even win you the larger bedroom or the last lemon tart at dinner. Some cousins duel so often the family tailor keeps spare sleeves on hand. On rare occasions, the local authorities get involved. but most know to look the other way if the participants are polite enough to clean up afterward. The aftermath is a strange blend of camaraderie and awkwardness. Everyone claps you on the back, offers congratulations, and asks if you'd like a drink or a bandage. By mid-morning, the dispute is usually forgotten, replaced by new gossip about who cried, who cheated, or who fainted at the sight of blood. Life goes on. Swords are put away until next time. Resentments are nursed privately, in anticipation of the next HR meeting. In Renaissance Italy, honor is serious business, and so are the duels that defend it. At least nobody's sending passive-aggressive emails. Here, you settle things face to face, sword to sword, and, if all goes well, without needing an awkward follow-up meeting, so you bandage your hand, straighten your doublet, and head inside. Another day, another duel survived. You're a Medici. You run the bank. This means you have more gold than sense and more enemies than friends. Family wealth is impressive, but it also makes you the #1 target for jealous rivals and snide poets. Don't get too comfortable. Debt collection here is a contact sport. From the moment you wake up, your day is measured in ledgers and dirty looks. The palazzo is stacked floor to ceiling with double-entry account books and enough contracts to make a notary cry. Every surface is a place to count coins, and every conversation is an opportunity to lend, or lose, money. Your relatives stroll in and out of the counting room all morning, pockets jingling, smiles fixed, each one convinced they're the exception to the family's no-interest-free loans policy. You try to keep track, who owes what, to whom, for how long, and under what secret threat. Your cousin insists his vineyard will definitely pay off next season. Your uncle needs just a little more gold to fund a business venture that smells suspiciously like another attempt to corner the pepper market. Meanwhile, a minor duchess you've never met appears at your door, dripping gratitude and subtle blackmail, eager to refinance her late husband's gambling debts. Outside the bank, your reputation precedes you. In Florence, everyone wants a piece of Medici fortune, except when it's time to repay. Rival families gossip about your creative accounting, and politicians eye your gold like a starving poet eyes free cheese. It's a city of alliances made and broken by whoever's holding the purse strings. And if you're not careful, you'll end up with a knife in your back, or worse, an unflattering mention in a new sonnet. Your workday involves equal parts arithmetic and amateur psychology. Lending money isn't just about numbers. It's about reading faces, guessing who's lying, and knowing when to send the polite reminder versus the not-so-polite cousin with broad shoulders. Sometimes you're the most popular person at the party. Other times, you're the reason nobody wants to sit near the punch bowl. Debt collection here is an art form. Forget phone calls or strongly worded letters. If someone is behind on payments, you might send a painted portrait of their grandmother looking disappointed, or a gift of black candles, just to remind them of the consequences. The family has a dedicated team of negotiators, relatives who specialize in persuasive conversations and have memorized the best hiding places in Florence. Occasionally, a missing chicken or mysteriously vanished wheel of Parmesan does the trick. Of course, with wealth comes risk. There are nights you can't sleep, listening for the softest creak outside your bedroom door. You've hired guards, but trust is expensive, and the line between employee and future competitor is thinner than your patience during tax season. Security is a moving target. Today's trusted clerk is tomorrow's rival banker. You stash your gold in ingenious hiding places, inside hollowed-out religious statues, beneath the dog's cushion, and, if desperate, sewn into your least fashionable doublet. Your enemies are not limited to rival families. The church occasionally frowns upon usury, that's lending money at interest, for those not up on their medieval sins, which means you sometimes need to donate a chapel or commission a fresco to smooth things over. The Pope owes you money, but you still have to act impressed when he blesses your third cousin's engagement. At the end of the day, your status as the family banker means walking a tightrope over a pit of jealous debtors, scheming allies, and relatives with creative ideas about fiscal responsibility. You count your coins, your blessings, and your remaining unpoisoned friends. Because in Renaissance Italy, being rich is great, until someone else decides they deserve it more. So polish your signet ring, keep your accounts balanced, and never, ever lend money to a poet. Because in this family, nothing is more dangerous or more essential than being the one who signs the checks. Gossip travels faster than a plague rat on market day. Your love life is public record, your debts are common knowledge, and your worst fashion choices are immortalized in sonnets. If you sneeze, 3 cities will know by sunset. Everyone is a source, everyone is a suspect. In Renaissance Florence, information isn't just currency, it's the national sport. Whispers ricochet off frescoed walls, dart through candlelit corridors, and spiral out the palazzo windows to mingle with street vendors, fishwives, and wandering poets. News doesn't walk here, it sprints, clutching a bottle of Chianti and a list of everyone's indiscretions. You learn early that anything you say, even under your breath, even in Latin, will be repeated, embellished, and set to music by lunchtime. You know you're the subject of gossip before you even leave your room. The servants change their tone when you enter the hallway. The kitchen maids suddenly remember a story that sounds suspiciously familiar. Didn't you say that exact thing about your uncle's wig just last night? By the time you reach the breakfast table, your romantic mishaps and overdue bills are being dissected alongside the merits of the morning's bread. Gossip isn't just idle chatter, it's weaponized. Your rivals drop juicy tidbits at the market, carefully timing their remarks so the right and wrong ears hear them. Your allies spin tales to protect your reputation, or at least distract from your latest disaster by pointing to someone else's. The city's writers, desperate for content, work your awkward slip at last week's masquerade into a biting satire performed in the piazza. If you're lucky, you get to play the tragic hero. If not, you're the punchline for the next month. Florentine rumor-mongering is a communal activity practiced by all ages and classes. Grandmothers share spicy news while pretending to shell peas. Children invent scandals about whose family dog ate the bishop's shoes. Even the family priest, sworn to secrecy in the confessional, drops hints about someone's excessive penance with just enough ambiguity to keep everyone guessing. Sometimes the gossip is true. Most of the time, it's an elaborate blend of speculation, wishful thinking, and outright fabrication. The story of your cousin's affair with the Venetian ambassador was actually just an enthusiastic debate about olive oil. That said, your cousin hasn't corrected anyone. After all, fame is fame, even if it's scandalous. Your brother's supposed gambling debt turns out to be nothing more than a bad run at chess. But the tale grows until he's rumored to have wagered half the family vineyard and 3 goats. You try to stay ahead of the rumor mill, but it's a losing game. One day, you're a mysterious beauty. The next, you're a would-be poisoner with a penchant for dramatic exits. You consider starting your own rumors just to see if anyone's paying attention. Did you hear about the time I outdueled a Swiss mercenary using only a loaf of bread? By dinner, someone's already added a goat and a stolen loot to the story. The upside is that gossip, while dangerous, is also a source of endless entertainment. A well-timed rumor can clear a room, start a dance, or end a feud, sometimes all in the same evening. Feasts and festivals aren't just social events, they're live-action news feeds where you can watch scandals unfold in real time and contribute your own anonymous tips. You learn to shrug off the stories, laugh at the exaggerations, and wear your reputation, whatever it is, with a mix of pride and resignation. After all, in Florence, anonymity is a myth, and privacy is something you barter away for a little attention or an advantageous match. You keep your real secrets buried deep and your best stories ready for the next round of speculation. Because here, in the birthplace of the Renaissance, the only thing faster than a brushstroke or a sword is a juicy bit of gossip. And if you can't beat the rumor mill, you might as well make sure you're at the center of it, preferably wearing your best doublet, with a witty comeback ready for the next headline. It's time to marry off your cousin for strategic gain. Suitors arrive armed with dowries and questionable teeth. Everyone pretends it's about love, but the only thing that matters is territory and alliances. You're suddenly grateful for your own disastrous romantic life. At least nobody is negotiating it over polenta. In Renaissance Italy, marriage is the family's favorite blood sport. The negotiation table is set with platters of dried figs and tension, the air thick with perfume and ulterior motives. Across from you sits a rival family's delegation, eyes glinting with ambition and possibly malice. Every handshake is a test, every smile a warning, and every polite comment about the weather is code for how much land are you hiding in the dowry. The eligible cousin in question, let's call her Bianca, has spent the last month learning how to smile without showing fear and how to ask strategic questions about goat herds. She's had her portrait painted 6 times already, each version with a slightly larger dowry purse photoshopped in for good measure. You, meanwhile, are in charge of making the family look normal, a task as thankless as it is impossible. Negotiations begin before the soup is even ladled. The matchmaker, always an uncle who's convinced he's a master of subtlety, opens with a list of family virtues and vague promises about future mutual prosperity. The rival mother counters with a recitation of her son's many skills, like reading Latin and surviving 3 cases of the plague, which, in this market, is basically as good as a pension plan. At some point, someone brings up the embarrassing incident with the pig. The goal is to get it all out in the open before dessert, so nobody can be accused of hiding anything. Every mistake Bianca ever made is recounted, from the time she tried to dye her hair with walnut shells to the infamous incident with the bishop's horse. The suitor, who looks like he's been awake since the previous pope, offers a nervous smile and a list of assets, including a hilltop and most of a vineyard. You sneak glances around the room, gauging which relatives are actually paying attention. Aunt Isabetta is making notes for future blackmail. The priest is praying, but his eyes are on the ledger. Someone is counting the spoons. Every so often, someone sighs loudly to remind everyone that this is all for the good of the family, though the real benefit is the hope that next year's Christmas seating chart will require a new table in another city. Dowries are the main currency. Cows, land, pearls, 3 crates of pomegranates, and the right to use a fountain are all up for grabs. The haggling is intense. The rival family wants 2 fields and an apology for the cheese incident of 87. Your family offers 1 field, a vague promise of future sons, and a tapestry that may or may not be cursed. Every offer is met with a gasp, a clutching of pearls, and a quick, whispered conference behind a fan. Eventually, as the candles burn low and everyone's dignity is wilting, an agreement is reached. Hands are shaken, documents are signed, and Bianca's fate is sealed with a kiss on both cheeks and a subtle but firm reminder that annulments are frowned upon. The new couple parades through the hall, trailed by relatives already speculating on the likelihood of heirs, the price of olives, and whether the groom's teeth can survive another winter. You breathe a sigh of relief. Another marriage, another alliance, another crisis narrowly averted, at least until next week, when it's someone else's turn. You vow to appreciate your single status, your freedom from dowry negotiations, and your right to eat polenta in peace. Because in Renaissance Italy, marriage isn't about love. It's about survival, strategy, and staying just 1 step ahead of the next proposal. Good luck, Bianca. You're going to need it. Did Aunt Isabella really fall down the stairs, or was it just another Tuesday? Every death is suspicious, and every funeral is a networking event. You're not paranoid, you're just statistically cautious. In the Renaissance palazzo, murder is less a crime and more a family ritual. If you're not waking up to rumors of a tragic accident, you're probably the one everyone's secretly betting won't make it to Christmas. You keep a mental list of which staircases are especially slippery, which windows open a little too easily, and which relatives have recently asked after your health in that vaguely ominous tone. There's no such thing as coincidence here, just a spectrum of plausible deniability. It all starts with the first suspicious scream. Maybe it's a chambermaid. Maybe it's the family parrot who's seen too much. Either way, within minutes the halls fill with relatives, each one more performatively shocked than the last. The family physician arrives, clutching a bag of herbs and looking as innocent as someone who's treated 3 cases of accidental poisoning this week can. He checks for a pulse, examines the scene, and pronounces a cause of death that's always just a little too convenient. Clearly, a tragic accident, he says, not making eye contact with anyone. The rest of the family quickly splits into 2 groups, those feigning grief and those taking notes for the next time. The kitchen staff gather to whisper theories in the pantry. The butler produces a bottle of brandy, for shock, and silently locks up the silverware. You, of course, take up your post as unofficial investigator, mentally reconstructing everyone's movements over the last 24 hours. Wasn't Uncle Giovanni in the library right before the fatal tumble? Didn't cousin Chiara look awfully pleased with herself during supper? Every death is an opportunity and a threat. While the body is laid out for viewing, relatives quietly circulate, pressing hands and offering condolences, all while gathering intelligence for the next family council. The reading of the will is anticipated with the excitement of a public execution. Who inherits the villa? Who gets the questionable tapestry? Who, suspiciously, gets nothing? You try not to stand too close to the fire, just in case someone's feeling inspired. Funerals in this family are half requiem, half strategy summit. Nobles from rival houses attend, each one hoping to glean a weakness or a new alliance from the latest vacancy. Everyone is dressed in black, except for Aunt Lucrezia, who's always just a bit too cheerful. The priest gives a moving eulogy that somehow avoids mentioning any of the more colorful episodes from the dearly departed's life. The wailing is proportional to the size of the expected inheritance. Mourning attire isn't just for show. Veils are handy for hiding tears, but also for muffling laughter at inappropriate moments. Black gloves are excellent for concealing ink stains or the occasional small vial of something suspicious. After the ceremony, the family gathers for a meal because nothing says closure like arguing over the dessert tray and eyeing the remaining relatives. You'd think these constant tragedies would bring the family closer together, but in reality, it's just given everyone a well-honed survival instinct. You sleep with your door locked, your wine glass within sight, and your will updated monthly. Your idea of family bonding is agreeing not to use the west staircase after dark. The upside? Nobody ever runs out of conversation. The downside? You can never truly relax. Not in the bath, not in the garden, not even at Mass. Statistically, you know it's only a matter of time before someone else tragically slips, or the family lawyer requests your presence for routine paperwork. In this palazzo, murder is tradition, funerals are auditions, and paranoia isn't just healthy, it's hereditary. Who needs external enemies when your cousin Giovanni is literally trying to have you arrested for improper beard length? External threats are stressful, but family drama is an art form. Sometimes it feels like everyone is plotting, but no one's sure exactly what. You might imagine that being a member of a powerful Renaissance family means living in constant fear of rival houses, dukes with vendettas, ambitious mercenaries, Venetian poisoners lurking in the alley. In reality, the greatest danger is usually sitting 3 seats down at dinner, disguised as a relative with too much time and a list of personal grievances. You're more likely to be ambushed in the garden by a sibling with a legal loophole than by a foreign assassin. Take cousin Giovanni. His campaign to have you declared unfit for polite society because of your questionable grooming habits is only the latest in a long line of absurd internal conflicts. Last month, your aunt nearly had you excommunicated for sneezing during the family rosary. The month before, someone left a dead fish on your pillow, a subtle, historic message that you still don't fully understand. Maybe it was just about dinner. Maybe it was a warning. With family, who can say? Family drama here isn't just drama. It's a sport, an inheritance, and a perfectly acceptable form of indoor entertainment. Plotting is so constant that even the household cat looks suspicious. Every small insult is filed away and later retrieved for maximum effect. If you fail to greet your uncle properly at breakfast, you may find your favorite chair accidentally missing one of its legs. Forgot your cousin's name day? Hope you like lukewarm bathwater for the next month. It's exhausting, but there's a certain artistry to it. Passive aggression is performed at the highest level. Arguments are never direct. They're veiled in references to obscure saints or recounted as parables involving livestock. You learn to read between the lines, to recognize the difference between "have some more bread," a genuine offer, and "have some more bread," you're on thin ice and everyone knows it. You develop new instincts. Always keep your back to the wall, never accept the first slice of cake, and assume any compliment about your tailoring is, in fact, a coded warning. Occasionally, real external threats do show up. Rival families send letters, bandits lurk on the roads, and the city council is always looking for an excuse to levy another tax. The palazzo circles the wagons, putting on a united front, at least until the crisis passes. Then it's back to business as usual, with Aunt Isabetta blaming you for the garden statue's missing nose, and your brother circulating rumors that you've gone soft on the Gonzagas. Sometimes, alliances shift so fast that you're not sure who's on your side until the dust settles. Yesterday's sworn enemy is today's reluctant partner in a lawsuit, tomorrow's guest of honor at a suspiciously well-attended lunch. There's always someone keeping score, someone accidentally eavesdropping in the corridor, and someone else quietly drafting a new family charter, just in case. The real genius of Renaissance family life is that no one ever fully wins. Even the most triumphant victory, securing the biggest room, getting your own fresco, winning back your family goat, is immediately undercut by a fresh round of plotting and passive-aggressive needlework. External enemies may come and go, but family drama is forever. So you sharpen your wits, keep your beard trimmed just in case, and try not to look too surprised when your sister accuses you of witchcraft at Sunday dinner, because in this palazzo, the line between enemy at the gate and enemy at the table is more of a decorative suggestion than an actual rule. And honestly, you wouldn't have it any other way. Family. You can't live with them, you definitely can't outplot them. Sitting for a portrait sounds relaxing, right? Not here. Every painting is a battleground. Are you placed at the center or the edge? Are you holding a sword or just a piece of fruit? One bad fresco and your legacy is ruined forever. The portrait artist arrives, lugging canvases, pigments, and a face full of nerves, because painting your family is only slightly less dangerous than testifying in court. The great hall is transformed into a studio. Sunbeams filtered through dusty windows, every chair placed with mathematical precision. Family members drift in, pretending this is just another ordinary morning, when in fact everyone is mentally rehearsing their natural expressions and quietly plotting for the best seat. The competition for central placement is fierce. Being in the middle of a Renaissance family portrait means status. It means power. It means you, and not your cousin Giulio, will be immortalized forever as the spiritual anchor of the dynasty, instead of the weird uncle who got stuck by the potted olive tree. The fight for center stage is polite but vicious. Elbows are sharp, coughs are strategic, and children are deployed as cute but obvious distractions. The debate over props is another minefield. Swords are coveted, books are for the clever, and flowers are for anyone resigned to being background decoration. The most unfortunate must hold the family dog, who is adorable in theory but in practice is a squirming, hairy saboteur with opinions about everyone's ankles. You quietly hope for a neutral object, maybe a lute, maybe an unread letter, anything that doesn't scream this person once lost a duel to a goose. When the posing finally starts, it's a study in psychological warfare. The eldest son leans in, chin high, radiating practiced benevolence and the subtle confidence of someone who already knows he's getting the biggest slice of inheritance. Your mother arranges her veil with the gravity of a queen and the subtlety of a chess master, while your father somehow always finds the best light, centuries before the invention of ring lights, and still smug about it. The artist attempts to corral you all, gently reminding the twins to stop poking each other with their sashes and begging Aunt Isabetta not to glare directly into the canvas. The children are bribed with honeyed almonds to sit still. The family's priest hovers at the edge, anxious to ensure everyone looks pious, at least until the painting is dry. You try not to blink. One poorly timed sneeze, and you're forever immortalized as the squinty one. Then comes the background. Is that the family palazzo behind you, or just a generic Tuscan hill? If the painter adds the wrong coat of arms, expect a decade of heated correspondence and awkward silences at every feast. Someone is already whispering about whether the backdrop should feature more lemon trees, a nod to the infamous dowry negotiation of 81 or fewer, for the sake of family pride. Sittings drag on for hours. Stiff necks, cramped hands, and slow-burning resentment all become part of the composition. The artist tries to capture character, which in Renaissance Italy mostly means make everyone look richer and less suspicious. A subtle smile can be interpreted as confidence, or, if you're unlucky, as evidence of plotting. You pray your likeness turns out flattering, or at least ambiguous enough to fuel centuries of family gossip. Finally, months later, the finished portrait is revealed at a grand dinner. Everyone crowds around, gasping and murmuring as they scan for imagined slights and unexpected triumphs. Are you near the front? Do you look heroic? Or like you ate something questionable? The commentary is relentless and will be repeated in coded references for generations. A single, misplaced feather, an awkward posture, or heaven forbid, a double chin, is enough to spark feuds that outlast actual wars. In the end, family portraits are less about capturing the moment and more about rewriting history in oil and egg tempera. Every painting is a message, every detail a subtle dig. Welcome to the Renaissance, where your legacy is painted in, and the family's favorite subtweet lasts forever. Evening descends and you're at another endless dinner party. Candles flicker, shadows loom, and the menu includes everything from swan to something called jellied lamprey. Conversation ranges from whose turn is it to start a war to did you hear about the Duke's gout? Try not to offend anyone, or you'll wake up in the cellar. It all starts with the seating arrangement, which is less family-friendly and more tactical deployment. Who sits closest to the host? Who's banished to the far end near the drafty window, where the only company is a statue of Saint Cecilia and a bowl of turnips? There's always a last-minute shuffle, a chair gets switched, a cousin unexpectedly promoted. Each move a small victory or defeat in the ongoing campaign for status. Once seated, you're handed a napkin the size of a bedsheet and a goblet of wine that is, according to family tradition, best tasted by someone else first. The appetizers arrive in waves, delicate pastries, suspiciously arranged fish, and salads with herbs nobody can pronounce. The cook, rumored to have survived 3 poisonings and an argument with your grandmother, watches from the doorway, silently daring anyone to criticize the seasoning. As the main course emerges, roast game birds, boar, peacocks plucked and reclothed in their own feathers, conversations crescendo. There are jokes about politics, cautionary tales about unfortunate cousins, and the ever-popular game of guess who's engaged to whom this week. You nod sagely and take careful, tiny bites, because nobody wants to be remembered as the dinner guest who choked on a pigeon bone. Table manners are strict but endlessly shifting. Is it polite to wipe your fingers on the tablecloth or only on your neighbor's sleeve? If you drop your fork, should you summon a servant or just pretend it never happened? Someone coughs loudly every time a controversial topic is broached. You learn to recognize the warning signs, a raised eyebrow, a sudden silence, or the subtle passing of the salt to someone who's clearly on thin ice. All the while, servants glide in and out, refilling cups and collecting empty plates with the efficiency of seasoned spies. You suspect they're keeping a running tally of who compliments the chef and who spits their quince compote discreetly into a napkin. The family dog lurks under the table, ready to dispose of any evidence that the lamprey was less than universally enjoyed. As the evening progresses, so does the intrigue. Plans are hatched between courses, alliances whispered behind fans, and feuds reignited with nothing more than a pointed glance. Dessert is served, a towering confection of marzipan and candied fruit that looks far too festive for a room full of people plotting each other's downfall. Toasts are proposed, sometimes to the health of the Pope, sometimes to old friends lost and new fortunes found, which everyone knows is a veiled reference to someone who recently fell out of favor and into a river. Before the meal ends, there is the postprandial stroll through the gallery, ostensibly to aid digestion, but really to continue negotiations in smaller, more conspiratorial groups. You're invited to admire the tapestries by an aunt who's been smiling too much, and you know better than to refuse. Finally, you're dismissed, your head spinning from wine, candle smoke, and the sheer volume of subtle threats disguised as pleasantries. You survived another Renaissance dinner party, no small feat. You check your pockets, your reputation, and your list of allies, already bracing for tomorrow's breakfast, where the real gossip will begin. Because here, the menu is always full of surprises, but the real dish served is intrigue, seasoned with just a pinch of danger and a generous helping of family drama. Forget Netflix. Your evenings are spent at balls, masked and anonymous, where secrets are currency and identities are flexible. Dance cards are filled with potential partners, but also potential blackmailers. It's like speed dating, but with more hidden knives. The palazzo transforms after sunset. Candles flicker in every sconce, shadows stretching theatrically across marble floors, servants bustling with trays of honey cakes and gossip. Tonight, you're not just a member of the family, you're anyone you want to be, as long as you're fast enough to change masks and stories before midnight. The only rule, never reveal your hand or your face until it's too late for anyone to do anything about it. You begin the night in a whirl of silk, velvet, and anticipation. Your mask is elaborate, ostrich feathers, painted gold, enough ribbon to trip a careless suitor. It barely fits, and the eye holes are strategically designed to limit both vision and self-preservation. But it's all worth it for the freedom to glide through the crowd as an enigma. For a few golden hours, you're untouchable, or at least unrecognizable. Even your closest cousins pause, squint, and move in for a cautious greeting. The ballroom swells with music, lutes, viols, the occasional out-of-tune harpsichord. Couples swirl and shift, trading partners, secrets, and the occasional dagger disguised as a fan. The dance floor is a chessboard, each step an opportunity to advance or retreat. You're not here just for the tarantella, you're here to eavesdrop, intercept love notes, and maybe broker a marriage alliance or two before dessert. Conversations are coded. Care for a waltz? Might actually mean, let's talk alliances in the gallery. Such lovely weather we're having is universally understood as, meet me behind the potted orange tree for a quick exchange of bribes. You spend half the evening deciphering compliments, always listening for the real message beneath the small talk. Meanwhile, the servants move like shadows, ferrying trays of spiced wine and keeping a running tally of who's seen dancing with whom. Every spilled drink is an excuse for a whispered rumor. Did you see who slipped away to the balcony? Who's been in the library for too long? The staff know more than the city watch, and they're much better at keeping secrets, until they're not. Masks drop as the night wears on, but only figuratively. The bravest or most desperate guests start making bolder moves. A cousin accidentally trips you in the corridor and whispers a warning about tomorrow's banking negotiations. A masked stranger passes you a note, folded tight and smelling faintly of almond paste, potentially poison. Definitely scandal. You tuck it away, planning to decipher it with lemon juice and paranoia later. The highlight of the night is always the unmasking, an orchestrated moment drawn out for dramatic effect, where identities are revealed and alliances, grudges, or illicit romances come sharply into focus. Maybe you recognize the person you've just promised your vote in the city council, or realize your dance partner is also your fiercest rival for inheritance. Reactions range from delighted shrieks to polite applause to the quiet, resigned sigh of someone who knows their secret is out and their goose is cooked. As the music dies down, the crowd disperses, some to plot, some to recover, and a few to nurse mysterious injuries sustained in the spirited final dance. You remove your mask and feel the sweat and relief mingle on your brow. For one more night, you've survived the game. Because in Renaissance Italy, the real nightlife is all about masks, motives, and memories that last a lifetime, or at least until the next invitation arrives. The family library is stacked with rare manuscripts, banned books, and enough secrets to keep a bishop up at night. You might stumble on your great-uncle's confession or a map to the family crypt. Just don't get caught reading the wrong thing. By day, the library is a refuge from the endless noise of the palazzo, a cool, dusty sanctuary, where the only sound is the gentle flutter of parchment and the distant echo of relatives arguing over lemon trees. Sunlight drifts in through stained glass windows, striping the ancient shelves with kaleidoscopic light. It's the one room in the house where you can pretend you're somewhere else, maybe even someone else, at least until your cousin barges in demanding something good to read, which is always code for something incriminating to hold over someone else. You walk the labyrinthine rows, running your fingers along the spines of tomes in Latin, Greek, and languages you can't even pronounce. Some are family heirlooms, illuminated manuscripts gifted by popes, scribbled notes left by ancestors who knew far too much for their own good. Others are strictly forbidden, treatises on alchemy, satirical pamphlets about the Pope's favorite horse, a volume titled How to Avoid Poisoning for Dummies. There are books hidden behind other books, and books with secret compartments in their covers, some containing pressed flowers, others containing pressed evidence. The librarians, ancient, eagle-eyed, and suspicious of anyone under 60, hover like gargoyles, shuffling around in felt slippers and clutching ringed keys to the most sensitive shelves. You've learned to act innocent, even if you're currently leafing through a treatise on Machiavellian politics that your father swore he burned last Easter. The penalty for getting caught reading heresy is severe. Either a stern lecture or a weak helping Aunt Isabetta with her restorative gardening, which involves manure and shame in equal measure, but the risks are worth it. Here, information is currency, often more valuable than gold. You might discover a letter that changes the outcome of an inheritance dispute, or a diary entry revealing which cousin was actually responsible for the mysterious fire in the East Wing. Sometimes, you stumble upon the library's darker treasures, letters from old enemies, coded recipes for antidotes, even a faded contract outlining the terms of a centuries-old family vendetta. The margins of every book are filled with notes, doodles, and the occasional threatening limerick. Every so often, the library plays host to a family study session, which is less about scholarship and more about strategic reading aloud for the benefit of anyone eavesdropping in the corridor. You'll hear passages on loyalty, treason, or the virtues of marrying well, always chosen with suspicious precision. Meanwhile, a servant is stationed outside, making sure nobody walks off with anything too dangerous or too entertaining. Occasionally, the church sends an official to audit the collection. This is your cue to help shuffle the spicier volumes into hidden alcoves, disguised as agricultural records or, if necessary, hollowed out and used to store emergency snacks. The whole family is in on the act, except for your grandfather, who proudly claims to have once lent a banned book to a bishop. He won't say which bishop, but the twinkle in his eye is all the proof you need. Of course, knowledge is a double-edged sword. One wrong book, and you're accused of heresy. One right book, and you're suddenly the new family advisor, until the next scandal breaks. You read with caution, and always with an exit strategy. If someone enters, you're instantly absorbed in a dull tome on crop rotation, the literary equivalent of plausible deniability, so you linger in the shadows, learning what you can, knowing the real danger isn't what's printed on the page, it's who might catch you reading it. In the Renaissance, a well-read mind is a dangerous thing, and in your family, it might just be the deadliest weapon of all. You annoyed the wrong cousin, and now you're packing for exile in the Tuscan countryside. Don't worry, it's only temporary, unless you make it permanent by falling in love with a local shepherd or writing bad poetry about olives. The moment the word exile is uttered, the mood in the palazzo shifts from tense to theatrical. The family lawyer starts drafting notices. The kitchen staff discreetly pack a hamper, mostly dried bread, and surprise cheese. And your great-aunt volunteers helpful tips for surviving rustic life, tips that, frankly, sound more like threats. Everyone agrees this is for your own good, especially the cousin who started the rumor in the first place. They send you off with the same energy as someone ridding the house of a troublesome goose. Relief, concern, and just a little bit of fanfare. Exile isn't as dramatic as being thrown into a dungeon, but it is infinitely more humiliating. You're not banished from Florence. Exactly. You're just encouraged to spend some time reflecting on your choices, far from the city's political fires and convenient witnesses. Your destination is usually a drafty villa, perched on a scenic but mosquito-infested hillside, or a crumbling ancestral farmhouse surrounded by suspiciously judgmental goats. Travel is its own ordeal. You're escorted out of the city at dawn by 2 servants and a wagon load of luggage that, you are reminded, must last you for however long it takes. Along the way, you're given one final chance to plead your case. Maybe you try for a dramatic monologue, but nobody's really listening. One servant is napping, the other is eyeing your traveling boots and calculating how long they'll last in the mud. Once you arrive, the countryside is both beautiful and utterly isolating. The hills are dotted with cypress trees and small, ominously quiet farmhouses. Your villa comes with centuries of dust, questionable plumbing, read, a bucket, and exactly 3 books, all about the lives of saints who died alone. The local peasants greet you with polite suspicion, and the village priest stops by to drop hints about repentance and to remind you to write home if you ever want to come back. Your days settle into a rhythm. Wake up with the roosters, attempt to write letters that sound sufficiently remorseful, and take long, melancholic walks past olive groves that, honestly, have seen better poets. Meals are simple, rustic bread, aged cheese, and whatever fruit you can harvest before the birds do. Occasionally, a care package arrives from the city, a stale cake, a slightly sarcastic note from your sister, and, if you're lucky, a smuggled copy of the latest city gossip. Isolation gives you plenty of time to think, but mostly you find yourself plotting minor acts of rebellion. Maybe you start a diary full of scandalous haikus, or teach the local shepherd's children Latin curses. You become intimately familiar with every variety of olive, both as food and as a metaphor for the bitterness of separation. If you make friends, they're outsiders too, a disgraced monk, a merchant's widow, or the one goat who seems to understand your pain. Eventually, word comes from the family. Perhaps your cousin has annoyed someone even more powerful and is now on the next donkey to Siena. Maybe you've served your penance, or maybe they just miss having someone to blame for lost silverware. Either way, you're summoned home with a letter that uses the word forgiveness at least 3 times and don't embarrass us twice as often. You return to Florence a little thinner, a little wiser, and a lot more careful about which cousin you insult in public. Exile, you realize, is just another family tradition, part punishment, part character-building exercise, and entirely too dependent on your ability to survive on stale bread and poetry. Welcome back. Try not to get exiled again, at least, not before harvest. Your family is a mess, but so is every other one in Italy. The Sforzas, Gonzagas, Estes, each one more paranoid and stylishly violent than the last. There's always a new feud brewing, and alliances are as stable as a house of cards in a hurricane. The Renaissance landscape isn't just rolling hills and pastel sunsets, it's a battlefield of competing dynasties, where the line between neighbor and arch-nemesis is as thin as your aunt's patience. You grow up learning not just your family tree, but the genealogies of every potential enemy for 3 provinces in any direction. A wedding invitation isn't an honor, it's a calculated move in a century-long chess game. You RSVP, maybe, mostly because you're waiting to see which family is most likely to be poisoned this month. Rival families keep you on your toes, your sword sharp, and your tongue even sharper. The Sforzas have cornered the market on ostentatious armor and suspiciously timed banquets. The Estes are known for their labyrinthine gardens and equally complicated vendettas. Meanwhile, the Gonzagas excel at surprise visits, subtle bribes, and theatrical apologies delivered just after they've stolen your favorite falcon. Every encounter is a performance. You meet at markets, festivals, or, more often than you'd like, funerals. The air is thick with double meanings. Lovely weather for spring might be an actual observation, or it might be code for prepare for litigation over that wheat field. Smiles are polite, but everyone's counting how many guards are lurking in the background. Sometimes, the rivalry spills out into open conflict, quick skirmishes over property lines, prolonged court cases over olive oil rights, or an all-out pie fight at the annual harvest festival. You try not to get too involved, but neutrality is for fools and Swiss mercenaries. At any given moment, you could find yourself caught in the crossfire of an ancient grudge that started over a stolen lemon tree and is now threatening to escalate into a citywide standoff. Alliances are fluid. Today, you're exchanging gifts and polite lies with the Gonzagas. Tomorrow, you're pretending not to know them in front of the bishop. Last year's blood feud is this year's joint business venture, usually brokered over wine and a mutual understanding that betrayal is just a matter of timing. Trust is a commodity traded carefully and rarely in bulk. Your elders reminisce about the good old days when a proper feud could last 3 generations and end with a handshake, or at least a mutually agreed-upon exile. Meanwhile, the younger cousins practice their dueling skills in the orchard, already rehearsing speeches for when they inevitably insult a Visconti at a masquerade ball. The city authorities try to keep the peace, but they're mostly there to document the drama and collect fines. If a brawl spills onto the piazza, someone's always ready with a quick bribe, a creative story, and an alibi that involves at least 2 bishops and a runaway goat. Still, rivalry isn't all blood and betrayal. Sometimes it leads to genuine brilliance, commissioning grander cathedrals, hiring better artists, outdoing your enemies in marble, music, or festival floats. The real competition isn't just about surviving, it's about being remembered. Preferably in a tapestry that makes your enemies look slightly shorter than they were in life. So you sharpen your wit, polish your armor, and keep your enemies and your relatives close. Because in Renaissance Italy, rivalry is an art, alliances are temporary, and the family that keeps you up at night isn't always your own. But hey, at least the parties are never boring. Weddings, christenings, executions, nothing is private. The whole city shows up, half for the free food and half to watch someone embarrass themselves. If you survive the speeches, you might just make it to dessert. Renaissance Italy is a land of grand gestures and even grander audiences. Hosting a private event here is as realistic as finding a saint who never once rolled their eyes. Your palazzo has doors wide enough for 2 horses to ride in side by side, but that's still not enough for the crowds that gather whenever the family throws a celebration or, equally likely, a public shaming. News travels fast, faster, in fact, than the official messenger. By noon, every fishmonger, artist, and street urchin knows whether today's event will feature dancing, drama, or disappointment. Preparation starts weeks in advance. Invitations are sent to every family, rival, bishop, and hangers-on with a last name worth mentioning. You suspect your guest list is longer than the city census. There's always a scramble to hire the best musicians, the most dramatic poets, and, if things are looking tense, the city's most discreet bouncers. Florists arrive with enough garlands to strangle a cathedral. Bakers triple their output. Somewhere, a pig is growing anxious. The real fun begins as guests arrive, parading their finest silk and their sharpest gossip. Neighbors peer down from upper windows, speculating on whether the bride's dress will outshine the last scandal, or whether Uncle Ludovico will manage to stay sober until sunset. Merchants and children crowd at the edge of the square, just close enough to catch a glimpse of nobility, or at least a stray bread roll. If it's a wedding, every step of the procession is an opportunity for civic theatre. The church bells ring, the choir sings, and distant cousins wave handkerchiefs with the precision of semaphore signals. Before the ceremony even begins, there's a minor crisis. A fainting bridesmaid, a priest with laryngitis, a page boy who forgot the rings. You're just grateful if the doves released outside the church don't decide to leave a parting gift on your new velvet doublet. At a christening, the spectacle is subtler, but only just. The baby is fussed over, relatives jockey for position near the font, and grandmothers outcompete each other in the art of tearful blessings. There is always one godparent with an agenda, and another who is just here for the wine. The city's artists attend in hopes of sketching an adorable heir, or catching a dramatic baptismal mishap for posterity. Executions, meanwhile, are the ultimate public gathering, equal parts cautionary tale and festival. Everyone arrives early for the best view. Vendors hawk roasted chestnuts and sweetmeats. The condemned gives a speech, sometimes moving, sometimes wildly inappropriate, while your relatives debate whether the executioner is up to snuff. Someone always faints, and someone always bets on how long the sentence will take. If you're lucky, Your family's role is limited to important witnesses, and nobody asks about that unfortunate business with the well. After any event, there's a feast, tables groaning with roasted meats, candied fruit, and gossip served by the spoonful. The toasts are endless, the speeches are questionable, and the potential for public humiliation is sky-high. There will be at least one impromptu musical number, a heated argument about the wine, and a brief, intense rivalry over the last slice of almond cake. The city talks about your event for weeks, recounting every wardrobe malfunction, every mispronounced name, every triumph and disaster. By the end, your family's private life is public property, dissected by everyone from the city council to the local fishwives. You make peace with the fact that in Renaissance Italy, privacy is a myth, and dignity is a moving target. But if you make it to dessert, with your reputation mostly intact, and your family only slightly more notorious, you've survived another civic crisis. And honestly, in this city, that's worth a toast. You're commissioning a new chapel, a Michelangelo statue, and 3 frescoes, all before lunch. Art is a way to secure your legacy, show off your taste, and start arguments that will last generations. The family motto, "He who dies with the most paintings wins." In Renaissance Italy, wealth is measured not just in ducats or dowries, but in brushstrokes. Everyone in your family is obsessed with getting their face, or at the very least, their elbow, immortalized by a painter whose name will echo through the centuries. The palazzo is cluttered with so many busts, portraits, and holy relics that there's barely space for actual living relatives. You have ancestors gazing down from every wall, each one silently judging your fashion choices and your ability to negotiate with sculptors. Patronage is competitive. If your cousin funds a chapel, you respond with a slightly bigger altar, more expensive marble, and a ceiling fresco featuring at least 3 extra angels. When Aunt Isabetta gets a Donatello Madonna, you order a matching one with a halo that sparkles just a bit more in candlelight. Your uncle insists on sponsoring a choir, even though nobody in the family can actually sing. It's all about one-upmanship, with a pious veneer and a running tally of who paid for what that will be recited at every family dinner until the end of time. The process itself is exhausting. Artists are fussy. They want more gold leaf, or better light, or creative freedom, which you agree to, so long as your nose looks noble and your rivals appear slightly out of focus. You meet in smoky studios, haggle over contracts, and make veiled threats about deadlines. Michelangelo is late with your statue. That's fine. You'll just casually mention that Raphael is in town and loves a challenge. Negotiating with the church adds another layer of drama. Every new chapel or window must be approved by 3 committees, and at least 1 cardinal with strong opinions about color palettes. You donate a small fortune to the cathedral. Smile through gritted teeth as your family crest is moved 2 inches to the left, and vow revenge by building your next chapel with twice as many saints. The unveiling of any new commission is a spectacle. Family members gather, each trying to stand in the best light, as artists dramatically whisk away velvet covers to reveal your latest masterpiece. There's polite applause, followed by not-so-polite whispering. Is that supposed to be your cousin's chin? Why does the archangel look so familiar? I'm sure I saw a better altarpiece in Pisa. Meanwhile, the subject of the portrait is busy memorizing every brushstroke for future arguments about inheritance and artistic representation. Of course, art isn't just about legacy. It's also about politics. Each new donation is a bid for power, a way to curry favor with the church, win over local guilds, or subtly remind rival families of your superior taste and bank account. You sponsor poets to write sonnets about your virtues, knowing full well they'll reuse the rhymes for your rival's birthday ode next week. Musicians compose madrigals that echo through the halls for generations, each note a reminder that your family has both taste and influence. Yet, despite the rivalries and the astronomical expense, there's a strange sense of unity in all this chaos. Siblings collaborate on mosaics, aunts and uncles debate over paint samples, and cousins pose for hours in stifling velvet just to get the family dog into a group portrait. And every time you walk past a chapel, a statue, or a fresco you paid for, you know you've secured a little slice of immortality, plus a lot of dinner conversation. Because in Renaissance Italy, to be remembered is to win, and in your family, nothing matters more than leaving behind something beautiful, especially if it outshines whatever your cousins left behind. Every mistake is a potential scandal. Your cousin's gambling debts, your aunt's love affair with a poet, your brother's questionable sideburns, all must be managed. You learn the fine art of rumor control, public apology, and, if all else fails, bribing the city notary. In a Renaissance family, reputation is as fragile as spun sugar and twice as likely to shatter when dropped. There's always a new crisis simmering in the background, a misplaced letter, an unchaperoned moonlit stroll, or the unfortunate incident at last year's masquerade involving a goat, 3 masks, and a barrel of Chianti. If you're not currently putting out a fire, you're bracing for the next one. Damage control begins at home. As soon as whispers reach the palazzo, usually via the kitchen staff or that neighbor who just happened to be passing by the convent at midnight, you spring into action. The first step is fact-finding. Was it really your cousin who lost the family silver at dice? Or was that just a clever ruse by your brother to distract from his failed poetry debut? You gather sources, cross-reference gossip, and summon the butler for his ever-reliable objective opinion. Then it's time to manage the narrative. Family elders convene an emergency meeting, complete with urgent pacing, ominous muttering, and the ceremonial passing of the blame. Apologies are drafted, stories are coordinated, and, if necessary, fall guys are appointed. If it's a small scandal, you might be able to solve it with a carefully worded letter to the bishop or a strategic donation to the local orphanage. For larger transgressions, like the time someone's betrothal party ended with an unexpected fountain dive, more drastic measures are required. Enter the art of distraction. Is your uncle's debt threatening to go public? Suddenly, you're hosting a grand feast, inviting every eligible bachelor in the city, and offering enough wine to blur the details of any story. If a rival family starts spreading rumors about your aunt's clandestine affair, you counter with an even juicier tale about their dubious accounting practices or that time they accidentally ordered a statue with 2 left feet. Public apology is a weapon, wielded with caution and flair. You practice the right look of remorse, sometimes in front of a mirror, sometimes with your most judgmental cousin as your audience. Sins are confessed, tears are dabbed, and, if you're really desperate, you light an extra candle for personal growth. The goal is to seem contrite enough to satisfy the priests, but dignified enough to maintain your place in the social pecking order. Bribery, of course, is always an option. The city notary has a fondness for marzipan and coin, and a single well-timed payment can ensure certain details are omitted from the official record. You maintain a rotating supply of thank you gifts, from rare cheeses to invitations to exclusive feasts. The notary isn't the only one who can be bought. Musicians, poets, even the town crier have all been enlisted at one point or another to spin a story or hush a headline. Sometimes, though, there's nothing for it but to ride out the scandal. The city has a short memory, especially when there's a new crisis to gossip about. You perfect the art of laughing off rumors, changing the subject, or embracing your notoriety with a flamboyant shrug. After all, the families survived worse, like the infamous sideburn incident of '94 or the Great Loot debacle. The truth is, scandal is inevitable when you live in a world where every eye is watching and every tongue is wagging. What matters isn't avoiding trouble, but handling it with style, speed, and just the right amount of plausible deniability. In Renaissance Italy, your reputation is your armor, and scandal management is an everyday performance in keeping it shiny. Night falls. The city is quiet, but your mind is racing. You triple-check the door, hide your jewelry, and sleep with one eye open. Family lullabies here are more like whispered threats, and the only thing you can count on is waking up to another day of chaos, assuming you wake up at all. You'd think that after a day of duels, poison testing, and politely dodging political proposals disguised as compliments, sleep would come easily. Not here. In this palazzo, bedtime is less a peaceful routine and more a strategic retreat. You prepare for bed the same way generals prepare for siege. Slowly, cautiously, and always with an exit strategy. First, you snuff the candles, but not all of them. Too much darkness invites danger. Too much light invites suspicion. You settle on a single flickering flame, the kind that barely illuminates the room, but might make a would-be assassin trip over the end table. Your bedroom, grand as it is, offers no comfort. The frescoed walls seem to stare at you, their painted saints silently judging your decision to sleep. Rather than keep watch from the wardrobe, the bed itself is a cavern of embroidered linens and goose-down pillows, but underneath the softness lies the prickling awareness that someone, possibly a cousin, definitely a servant, is awake in the hallway, listening for movement. You fluff your pillows anyway. If you're going to be anxious all night, you may as well be supported. Locking the door is a ritual. You slide the bolt, tug on it twice, then shove a chair under the handle for good measure. The chair won't stop anyone determined, but it will at least buy you a few seconds to scream, pray, or compose a dramatic final speech. You stash your valuables in your most ingenious hiding spots, inside a hollowed-out prayer book, under the mattress, and once, disastrously, behind a loose brick that fell out midnight and nearly crushed your foot. You've learned since then. Now everything is tucked strategically into places even you struggle to remember. Outside, Florence hums with nocturnal life, vendors cleaning up from the day, distant lute music drifting from a tavern, the clatter of a horse stumbling home from somewhere it shouldn't have been. Inside, the silence is thicker, heavier. Every creak in the ceiling becomes a clue. Every gust of wind sounds like a conspiratorial whisper. You tell yourself the footsteps are just servants doing late-night rounds, but deep down you know, in this family, nobody just walks around after midnight unless they're hiding something or hunting for it. You climb into bed and pull the covers up to your chin. The sheets are cold, the blankets smell faintly of lavender and dread, and your mind begins the bedtime routine, replaying every conversation you had today, cataloguing who seemed friendly, who smiled too much, and who made a suspiciously vague comment about seeing you tomorrow, hopefully. You practice breathing exercises learned from a monk who once visited the house. He lasted 2 days before fleeing for the mountains. Sleep hovers, tempting but dangerous. You lie still, listening for the telltale scratch of a note being slipped under your door. Polite blackmail, the clang of armor in the corridor, formal trouble, or the soft clink of someone testing whether your lock is as sturdy as you think it is, informal trouble. Even the family dog pads through the hallway, sniffing for leftover dinner or signs of imminent treason. Eventually, exhaustion wins. You drift off in short bursts, dreaming of peaceful meadows that inevitably morph into tax disputes or masked balls gone wrong. Some nights you wake up clutching a pillow like a shield. Other nights, you wake because a distant cousin is arguing loudly 2 floors below. A Renaissance palazzo never truly sleeps. It merely takes shifts, and when morning comes, with church bells rattling your skull and sunlight filtering in like judgment, you breathe a sigh of relief. You made it. Another night survived, another day ahead, full of politics, paranoia, and pastries that may or may not be safe, because in this house, rest is just a theory. Bedtime is a battleground. And sleep? Sleep is something you earn by staying alive long enough to attempt it again tomorrow. Sometimes handling family business means hiring someone who knows their way around a stiletto. No, not the shoe, the knife. You don't go on Craigslist. You send a coded message via choirboy. You meet in a dimly lit alley that smells faintly of cheese and ambition. By morning, either your rival is gone, or you've just paid a stranger to eat all your salami and run. Renaissance outsourcing at its finest. Of course, the decision to hire a hitman is never made lightly. It usually starts after a family meeting, one filled with thin smiles, veiled threats, and at least one cousin dramatically whispering, "Something must be done." Everyone pretends to vote on the matter, but really, you're the one who gets voluntold. Suddenly you're handed a pouch of coins, a list of grievances, and a reminder to use discretion, which is hilarious coming from a family whose scandals echo through 3 provinces. Your journey begins with locating the right assassin, which is not unlike finding a good tailor. Everyone claims to know one, none are actually available, and the ones who are available tend to be suspiciously enthusiastic. Word travels through subtle signals, slipped notes, coded prayers, the occasional fish head left in the market. Eventually, a choir boy discreetly clears his throat during Mass and hands you a folded scrap of parchment. On it is a single symbol. You pretend to understand its meaning and nod gravely. You make your way to the meeting spot. Always an alley, always damp, always occupied by at least one cat who looks like it has seen things. The assassin arrives fashionably late, swaddled in dark fabric, voice gravelly, posture dramatic. He introduces himself with a name so theatrical it can't possibly be real. You try to shake hands. He refuses on principle. Fingerprints, he mutters. Though nobody will invent those for centuries. Negotiation is awkward. You outline the task using vague euphemisms. Remove, neutralize, encourage a long vacation. The assassin responds with questions you're not prepared for. Preferred method, public or private? Any allergies? You have no idea. Your family never discussed the specifics, only the politics. You settle on something memorable but tasteful, which seems to satisfy him. Payment is its own ordeal. You hand over the pouch of coins, and he weighs it in his palm like a baker scrutinizing dough. He raises an eyebrow. It's never enough. It doesn't matter what you bring. Hitmen are born knowing how to look disappointed. You add a small wedge of cheese you packed for emergencies. Now he's satisfied. By dawn, he promises, which is either terrifying or comforting depending on how much wine you've had today. The next morning you wait, and wait. Every sound outside your window could be the assassin delivering news or collecting another payment. Breakfast is impossibly tense. You sip your watered wine and try to look nonchalant while imagining every possible outcome. Did he succeed? Did he flee the city with your money? Did he switch allegiances because the rival family offered him better dental coverage? Finally, word arrives. Sometimes the mission is accomplished. Your rival is missing, ill, or taking a spiritual retreat to Genoa. Other times, the assassin leaves a cheerful note explaining that unforeseen circumstances, weather, guards, personal drama, prevented completion. In those cases, you just shrug, update the family ledger, and prepare for the next attempt. But occasionally, just occasionally, your hitman takes the money and vanishes entirely, resurfacing years later as a monk or a tavern singer, or a man selling suspiciously familiar salami in Pisa. And honestly, you respect that, because Renaissance problem-solving is nothing if not chaotic, personal, and deeply unregulated. Hiring a hitman is just another line item on the family's to-do list, tucked neatly between repair courtyard fountain and pretend everything is fine. And in this world, sometimes outsourcing is the only way anything gets done. Why leave your future up to fate when you can pay a wizard in a funny hat to tell you it's all going to end badly? Your family has at least one astrologer on retainer, mostly for reassurance and occasionally to blame when everything goes sideways. Is Mercury retrograde, or is your cousin just plotting again? Either way, the forecast is mostly doom, with a chance of public embarrassment. You'd think having access to the leading minds of Florence would mean answers, or at least some sensible advice. Instead, you have a revolving door of men in velvet robes, women with suspiciously smoky rings, and the odd monk clutching a bag of philosopher's stones that looks suspiciously like river rocks. The astrologer lives in the attic, surrounded by brass astrolabes, crumbling star charts, and a collection of rare and possibly illegal herbs. His beard alone is enough to inspire respect or, at the very least, a healthy skepticism. Every major family decision begins with a consultation. Planning a wedding? Better check the stars. Buying a new vineyard? Consult the heavens first. Debating whether or not to exile a cousin? That's a job for the tarot cards. The entrails of a goose, or, on bad days, the bottom of a wine bottle. The astrologer arrives at breakfast, squints at the sunrise, and tells you to beware of people whose names start with the letter G. You nod gravely, and then avoid your entire family for a week. Then there are the alchemists, perpetually on the brink of discovering gold, eternal youth, or a solution to your family's chronic olive oil shortage. They come armed with glass flasks, lead tablets, and an optimism bordering on delusion. Every few months, one manages to set the kitchen on fire in pursuit of the stone, or at least an excuse to explain why all the good cutlery is missing. Your uncle is convinced he can turn tin into silver. He's been at it for a decade, and the only thing he's produced is a lot of very expensive grey dust. Despite their poor track record, astrologers and alchemists enjoy job security rivaled only by the family dog. If anything goes wrong, you can blame them. Yes, the Sforzas invaded our vineyard, but Saturn was in a difficult aspect, and Uncle Pietro wouldn't stop stirring the mercury. Nobody really understands what any of it means, but it sounds convincing when recited in Latin with enough dramatic hand gestures. Of course, these experts are not cheap. The astrologer charges by the hour, the phase of the moon, and the number of times you interrupt him mid-prophecy. The alchemist works for science, but never forgets to submit a bill for rare spices, glassware, and the occasional live chicken for experiments. You suspect half of it goes toward a side business selling healing powders to gullible neighbors. Results, as you might guess, are mixed. Sometimes the stars correctly predict a surprise guest at dinner. Other times, all they predict is food poisoning. The alchemist's latest potion promises to restore hair, repel evil, and settle old debts. You test it on your brother, his hair turns green, his debts remain, and the only evil repelled is your grandmother, who refuses to sit next to him for a week. Still, your family persists. The hope of outsmarting fate, or at least outwitting the neighbors, is too tempting. Plus, it's comforting to know that when disaster strikes, you can always say you were doomed from the start. The next time an astrologer warns you of impending trouble, you nod, thank him politely, and ask if he sees a winning lottery number in your stars, or at least a week with no new scandals. Because in Renaissance Italy, a little magical thinking is the best insurance policy. And if it fails, you can always try the garlic. Court cases aren't about justice, they're about who can afford the best Latin. Today, you're in court because your uncle claims you stole his prized pig. But really, it's about a vineyard. You stare down the judge, who is also your godfather, and recite your family's 500 years of grievances. By the end, nobody remembers what you were fighting about, but you're all slightly poorer and still have to eat dinner together. Legal matters in Renaissance Italy are less innocent until proven guilty and more loudest voice wins. The family drama doesn't stop at the palazzo door. It spills into the courts, the piazzas, and, on special occasions, the town crier's morning announcements. In fact, the only thing more competitive than banking in Florence is the fine art of suing your relatives for imagined slights and highly questionable property lines. The process begins with an official summons, usually delivered by a town official who looks like he's been bribed by both sides. You dress in your finest robe, something sober, but not so plain that it suggests guilt. Your mother lectures you on maintaining family dignity, while your siblings take bets on who will cry first. It's usually the lawyer. Court itself is less an arena of law and more a stage for family theatrics. The courtroom is packed. Rival relatives, curious neighbors, at least 3 people who have nothing better to do, and your one cousin who claims to be there for support but is really just hoping to overhear something scandalous for the next dinner party. Arguments are conducted in flowery legal Latin, peppered with sly asides and personal insults thinly disguised as points of order. The judge tries to maintain order, but everyone knows he's balancing justice, family loyalty, and the hope of getting invited to the next big feast. The case file is a stack of parchment thicker than a Bible, full of contradictory witness statements and enough footnotes to keep 3 monks employed for a month. The lawyers are the real stars. Yours is a master of rhetoric, capable of quoting Cicero in one breath and accusing your uncle of moral bankruptcy in the next. Your uncle's lawyer, meanwhile, produces elaborate family trees, letters written in the dead of night, and the pig itself, squealing, unamused, and thoroughly uninterested in property law. The jury is a rotating panel of minor nobles who pretend not to be related to anyone, which is a lie so transparent that even the pig looks skeptical. At some point, the proceedings devolve into a history lesson. Every ancient slight, every disputed dowry, every rumor of illegitimate children is paraded before the court. Your uncle weeps, your cousin faints, and you try to remember if you ever actually saw the vineyard in question, or if it was just something your father mentioned between mouthfuls of cheese. By the end, nobody is sure whether you're arguing about land, livestock, or who gets the last word in family meetings. Eventually, the judge delivers his verdict, which is always a masterclass in ambiguity. The vineyard will be divided, the pig will be returned, with apologies, and both parties are ordered to seek reconciliation, preferably somewhere far from the courthouse. You pay your lawyer, tip the town crier for his discretion, and leave the courtroom slightly poorer and infinitely more exhausted. That night, you gather for dinner, pretending nothing happened. The pig is conspicuously absent. Conversation drifts carefully around the day's events, focusing instead on the weather, the Duke's latest marriage, or how much cheese is left for dessert. Under the table, your uncle kicks your shin, gently, but with meaning. You nod, signaling mutual defeat. In Renaissance Italy, legal battles are just another chapter in the family saga, expensive, dramatic, and ultimately futile. Tomorrow, someone else will file a complaint, and the whole circus will start again. All you can do is perfect your courtroom bow and keep the family lawyer on retainer, just in case. You know it's a rough year when the family physician starts packing up his own bags. Someone sneezes at breakfast, and suddenly you're quarantined in a wing of the palazzo with a bucket of garlic, 3 worried nuns, and a get-well-soon note from a cousin who's already planning to move into your room. On the bright side, nobody's asking you to plan a wedding, just your own will. Every so often, after decades of exiles, poisonings, and strongly worded sonnets, the family decides it's time to reconcile. There's a big feast, a suspicious amount of hugging, and an apology letter so passive-aggressive it might as well be a legal document. Peace is declared, everyone toasts with wine, and for one brief, shining moment, you can almost relax, until someone brings up the great cheese incident of 1482, and the whole cycle begins again. Reconciliation in a Renaissance family is a performance worthy of the grandest stage in Florence. The preparations alone would make a wedding look like a quiet lunch. Aunt Isabetta drafts a mutually agreeable letter, which mostly lists what everyone is not allowed to bring up under any circumstances. The palazzo is scrubbed, tables set with enough cutlery for a battalion, and the servants briefed on emergency evacuation routes. Even the family dog gets a bath, just in case he ends up on the guest list. Guests arrive as if summoned by papal decree, cousins not seen since the last scandal emerged from the countryside, draped in new clothes and old resentments. Your great-uncle, who's been traveling red, hiding from creditors, is back, cheeks rosy from exile or just from the local wine. Everyone greets each other with cautious enthusiasm. The rule is kiss on both cheeks, but keep one eye open. The feast is extravagant. Roast meats, sugared fruits, and breads with actual butter, not just the threat of it. You sit next to a relative whose grudge against you could be classified as a family heirloom, making small talk about weather, crops, and whether your cousin's hairpiece is new. The musicians play tunes so lively you almost forget the last time someone tried to poison your dessert. Then come the speeches, long, meandering odes to family unity and forgiveness. The patriarch recites a history of grievances so diplomatically worded that it takes you a moment to realize he's apologizing for the year someone released chickens in the dining hall. Glasses are raised, wine is poured, and even the staunchest holdouts nod in cautious agreement. At least, until dessert. It's always dessert. Maybe it's the sugar rush, maybe it's just tradition, but something about marzipan brings out the family's true colors. Someone lets slip a comment about the good old days. Someone else corrects the record on whose fault it was that the family portrait was ruined by mysterious stains, and suddenly every spoonful is seasoned with thinly veiled accusations. In these moments, you can almost see the détente unraveling. Aunt Lucia's smile grows brittle, Uncle Vittorio polishes his ring a little too aggressively, and the youngest cousins start whispering about round two. But for now, peace holds. Apologies are exchanged, sometimes even meant. There is hugging, too tight, a little too long, but technically hugging. As the night draws on, the family lingers in the candlelight, recounting victories and defeats. Someone tells a story that manages to both insult and compliment everyone at the table. There is laughter, and for a moment, it's genuine. The bonds forged over years of shared disaster and recovery prove surprisingly resilient. You realize, for all the feuding and plotting, no one else could possibly understand your childhood better or have a more embarrassing stash of stories. And so, the great peace feast ends. People drift off to bed, stomachs full and hearts guarded but a little lighter. Maybe, just maybe, this truce will last until the next harvest, or at least until the wine runs out. But even if it doesn't, you know that in this family, making up is just another step in the endless, absurd dance of rivalry and reconciliation. Because here, forgiveness is an art form, grudges are cherished, and peace is never permanent, but it's still worth celebrating. Just don't mention the cheese. So, tonight, as you drift off in your clean sheets, no cousin lurking behind the curtain, no poison tester for your midnight snack, no aunt plotting to exile you over a lukewarm cappuccino, take a moment to appreciate just how far we've come. The Renaissance Italian family survived on a diet of anxiety, intrigue, and enough passive-aggressive notes to fill a Vatican archive. Their homes were museums of family drama, every fresco hiding a secret, every dinner a potential Last Supper, and every bedtime a test of trust in your lock and your relatives. You, on the other hand, get to close your eyes in a world where your family reunion doesn't usually involve a notary public, a secret passage, or a backup will. Indoor plumbing, toothpaste, and a distinct lack of urgent assassination attempts are luxuries they could only dream of if they ever slept deeply enough to dream at all. Let's give a nod to those old dynasties, tangled in velvet, ambition, and paranoia. Their relentless plotting, scheming, and accidental poisonings kept cities running, artists paid, and the Renaissance rolling along, even if it sometimes felt more like a game of high-stakes musical chairs than civilization's rebirth. For all their faults, they were survivors, clever, stubborn, and bizarrely hopeful. The world they built, for all its chaos, eventually gave way to ours, a place where the only daggers you face are in group texts, and the worst family feud is over who forgot to take out the recycling. So, as you tuck yourself in tonight, be grateful for the quiet. Whisper a quick grazie to the ancestors who made it through betrayals, plagues, and feasts that doubled as court depositions. Sleep deeply, knowing that the only Medici lurking in your dreams is probably an art history meme. And remember, history is ridiculous, but it's also a testament to just how much people can endure and how much they can laugh once they're finally safe in bed. Good night, and may your dreams be peaceful, your family drama minimal, and your sleep uninterrupted by masked cousins with suspicious motives.